Hey, Dad.
Hi, Avery.
In school right now in INS, we're talking about the 7 elements of culture. The 7 elements of culture are different things that make up someone's culture. Now I'm interviewing you and asking you 3 questions for only 5 elements of culture. The questions have to be connected to our family, and they are about how different things connected to the elements influence us as a family. So the first element I chose was arts and literature. How has living in China influenced the different movies and TV shows we were able to watch? For example, we used to watch The Ellen Show in Canada, but now we can't watch it anymore.
Yeah, we don't watch network TV or TV shows that much anymore. Mostly we have our own devices that we watch TV on, and we also buy a lot of DVDs and purchase them from iTunes.
How has living in China affected the way we see different types of art, including sculptures, visual art, etc.?
Yeah, I don't know how much we used to see that stuff in the past, but certainly Shanghai in China has a lot of museums and a lot of art museums, and you have the ability to go out and see different things. So I would say it's a big city, so you have a lot of opportunities to see art.
Have we seen painting or sculpturing differently through living in Thailand, especially like visiting all of the
So
temples?
sorry, Thailand or China?
Thailand.
Thailand.
And like especially visiting the temples.
Yeah, we used to see a lot of Thai traditional art and a lot of Buddhism and temples and it was an amazing amount of culture that we used to go and see. Yes.
The second element I chose was customs and traditions. So the first one is, how is living in China influenced the way we celebrate our traditions?
Well, we've always had the same tradition when it comes to Christmas, no matter what country we lived in, which is we always spend Christmas in our home. So home is wherever you live. I think Shanghai, China, doesn't make a big fuss about Christmas. When we were in Hong Kong, they made a much bigger fuss. When we were in Thailand, there was also a pretty big fuss. But we still make a fuss. We brought our ornaments and our tree and everything, and we still have a traditional Christmas in our home.
How has living in Thailand and China changed things that we used to do in Canada?
Yeah, the weather is a lot different. So there's a lot less skating, a lot less ice hockey, a lot less tobogganing, a lot less hiking, all the things we used to do a lot of when we lived in Canada.
Have we had to completely change our traditions in different countries because we don't have like the resources? For example, like we don't really get the candy for Halloween that we used to.
Yeah, Halloween is different for sure. Although they still make a big fuss, kids still come to the house, but it's not the same as it used to be in Canada. And I think other holidays, for instance, today's Canadian Thanksgiving. Not a lot of people celebrate Thanksgiving here. Hardly get a turkey. There's other holidays that we would celebrate in Canada, like May 24th, which is Victoria Day. We don't get to celebrate that here. Mother's Day, Father's Day, not a big fuss. So some of the holidays and traditions change, but you also get new ones like Chinese New Year and cool things like that.
So the third one I chose was social organization. So the first one is, how has moving to countries affected the way we see our other family?
Well, we see them, my mom and your mother's mother, they always used to complain about not getting to see us, but probably you change the frequency for the length. So we used to see them more often, but for shorter amounts of time. And now we usually go home in the summer and see them for only once a year, but a long amount of time. And I would guess, I know that we see them more often now than we ever did when we lived in Canada.
Does moving away from our family change our relationship with them?
Well, yeah, it definitely changes. I think you spend more time keeping in touch. So, for instance, you spend every Sunday and you talk to your grandparents on Skype, and it's a tradition, yeah?
Yeah.
And I try to talk to my mom on Friday nights and speak to her then, and emails and cards, and so it's just a different way of keeping up. It's not better or worse, and I think it makes you miss home a little more, but then it's really nice when you get to see them.
The last one is actually connected to your answer. It was how has calling our grandparents through Skype affected us as a family?
Well, I mean, again, you know this better than me, but you get when you're home in the summer, you get to spend time with your grandparents. But I think you spend more time talking to them about what's going on in your life, and they ask a lot of questions, and I think you probably talk to them in a deeper, more meaningful way over Skype than you do if you just saw them at their house and you were sitting with your sister and they were busy making dinner. And I think it's a deeper connection because they're more invested in talking to you.
The fourth one I chose was language. So the first one is, how did moving to Thailand and China affect the way we communicate to others?
Well, to others, you mean, well, we've had to learn new languages for sure, and some of us are better at learning languages than others. For instance, Avery has learned a lot of Mandarin, and I have not. But I think living in a different culture makes you, and having to learn a new language makes you appreciate, your own language even better, because you just take it for granted everybody speaks English and they don't, and it's fantastic to learn other languages and to communicate with people in a different way.
How has going around to different shops and places in China been hard because of speaking Mandarin?
Yeah, I think of all the places we've lived, Hong Kong and Bangkok, and this has some English, but not very much. So it's been challenging, but I think the biggest thing isn't so much when you go to the shop, but it's finding out information about the places. That's the harder thing. So if I want to know where to buy something or where to go to get something, that's much more difficult in Shanghai and China than it was in other places.
Is it easier to communicate to people with words or body language in China?
Well, for me, because I don't speak Mandarin, I don't know how much body language works, but I've learned really basic Chinese, how to turn left, how to turn right, pointing at stuff. So yeah, I think body language is important because I don't have a lot of the other kind of language.
All right, so the last one I chose is all connected to Thailand, and it's about the government. So how did the political unrest between the yellow and red parties in Thailand affect us while living there?
Yeah, well, we were in Thailand for 2 major coups, so it was very nerve-wracking, and I felt, I never felt unsafe for the family, but it certainly was stress, and the 2 parties seemed to always be in a constant battle of the red party would be elected and then the yellow party would be unhappy about it and they would stage a coup, and then it was very difficult. So there was some protests and things shutting down and some nervousness, but I mean nothing terrible happened. A couple of bombs, that's never good, but I always felt like we were safe, but it was a concern.
How did the infrastructure affect my family while living there?
Oh, well, Thailand, Bangkok in particular, has a notoriously bad infrastructure, meaning they have a lot of great buildings, but they don't consider the roads and the drainage and the transportation, so it's kind of chaotic. There's not a lot of sidewalks, and there's a lot of flooding, and traffic can be really, really bad in certain places. So definitely whenever we were going somewhere, it was always a concern, whether we were going to get there in time and never knowing how soon to leave. Or so yeah, it was. We learned how to deal with it, but it took a while.
How did the adoration of the king affect us? Well,
Yeah, the king has recently passed away, but when we were there, the king, obviously the one that we're talking about, Ball, was definitely like almost like a deity, like a god, and everyone worshipped the king. So coming from a country where we had elections and we didn't have a king, we didn't really understand why people were so enamored and so worshipful of the king. But you had to be, because if you weren't, the ties were very strict about making sure that you followed respect for the king. You had to stand up at the movie theater. You couldn't say anything bad about the king. So, I mean, I remember you guys used to even come from school and be like talking about how the king was so great and the king did all these things, because even your teachers were telling you that the king did all this stuff, even whether he did or not. So it was very interesting to live in a country where there was a person who was worshipped like that.
All right, Dad. Thank you for sitting down with me, and we had a good talk about the 7 elements.
Well, you asked me a lot of interesting questions. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Avery.
Thank you.